All right, so let's start with the chaos that is being created by California once again. Um, the law is California Assembly 1753, if you want to look it up and find those fun readings. But it mainly reports or regards to two different things. The serial ID that's being added to all California forms, as well as the reporting on the back end. For all practical purposes, you guys will not have to do anything differently. It's not changing our pricing. It doesn't need to change how you submit anything. But there are changes that these changes will affect you and your customers, and we'll get into that. But the majority of the stuff we're kind of handling on the back end already. All right, so the law changes basically all state-approved printers, and we are one of them, must add a uniquely serialized number to every form. The second part of the law is that all approved printers must submit reporting electronically to the state, the Department of Justice, for every shipment that's been received by the following business day. So we have a very limited time frame in which we need to submit our reporting. But again, that's what we do on the back end for you. It's something that we used to have to do it on a limited basis, but it was on a monthly time frame. Now they're having us basically upload on a daily basis. So we submitted our first reports and file for reporting today, and that's going smoothly. So those are the two main things. One is that new serial number, and the second thing is reporting on the back end that we're doing. So the serial number has some logic behind it. And what this is, it's a 15-character code. The first three characters are going to be an alpha code, which is basically our unique printer ID that the Department of Justice gave us. This is different than the printer ID that they gave us when we originally became compliant with the state back in 2004. So we kind of have two different numbers, and we'll highlight that on the form. But you will see a PMN, and that's going to be our alpha code. And then there's going to be a 6-digit code that's going to indicate when the form was printed. And then the last 6 characters is going to be starting with an alpha, and then it's going to be a sequential number for the serial ID. Again, this is different than the lot number or the sequential number that was on the form before. And it's a little bit different. It goes sequential not necessarily by your customer's order, but it goes sequential by the number, the form that we produce for that day in general as a printer. So we might be producing your first order for the day, but that might be our 10th that we produce for that day. And so that serial number might start at a much higher number than the usual one. So this is what this looks like. The serial number you can see indicated by the arrow. It's going to be the PMN and then the date and the code within there. Just to the right of that is what we call the lot number, or else the sequential number. California state law requires that that always starts at 1. So that's different, or that's what was in the original law. That was not removed and that did not change. Then to the right of that is the batch number, which is also an indication or is also a requirement by the state. And that code is basically the date format of when you send in the order and our job number. It looks really similar to the serial ID number, which is why the state is requiring us to put serial and the number sign right before the actual serial number. So those three things are all part of the law now that are required. So this is where we're putting it on our standard pad areas above the blue bar there. And then within as well as this is where it's going to be for any laser orders for our standards. For the CAMs, or the multi-prescription forms, you're going to see that we're going to have, again, the same thing of the serial number, the sequential number, or otherwise known as the lot number, and then the batch ID. So this is where it's going to go on the CAMs. If you have semi-customs forms, that is going to go basically where a combination of where our pre-press department can fit it and makes most sense on the form, as well as following some of the guidelines for where it needs to be. It needs to be around the boundary of the form, so we can't kind of stick it in the middle where there's open space. So if you have a semi-custom forms with us, pre-press will be kind of deciding where that needs to go based on the regulations. All right, one thing I want to talk about is the non-changes to the law. So this new law only adds a serial ID. It does not address anything else within the form. So if we go back to the format here, down in the lower left-hand corner is SP01. That is also Printco's printer ID. We were the very first printer approved by the state back in 2004. So our number is number 1. Literally and figuratively. I know that we're number 1 in your hearts. So, but again, we have the printer ID, we have the batch number, and we have the lot number that were requirements before this new law. And now we're adding this new serial number to the mix. So understand that the other things don't go away. And it, in my opinion, makes it even more confusing. So we received, not everyone, but all of the pharmacists received notification of the Board of Pharmacy's stance on this new law, as well as on the 27th or the 28th, the medical board sent out a memo to all of their doctors and medical practitioners indicating this stance. This letter does 3 things, a fourth that I'll highlight. One, you can see the date, December 27th, 2018. So that was the Thursday before New Year's Day. This is when the Board of Pharmacy gave direction to all the pharmacists on how to handle this new law. It's not a lot of time. It's BS, and it's creating a lot of chaos for the doctors and pharmacists, and we'll get into that. So within the law, it basically within the memo by the Board of Pharmacy, who decides on the pharmacist's stance, is basically says that the forms without the serial ID are not compliant, and they must be compliant as of January 1st. So this means that all of the forms that were produced without the serial ID are now technically non-compliant. This memo also does add towards the bold at the bottom. Basically, it says that the Board of Pharmacy is not going to have an investigation or actions against the pharmacists that may take or use or accept a non-compliant form until after July 1st. So it's basically takes away the penalization of pharmacists for taking a form that doesn't have the serial ID until July 1st, kind of give a little leeway. As well as on the second page of the form, it gives those suggestions and those responses to the pharmacists for what to do if they get a prescription that doesn't have the serial ID. So they have several options that they give. The last and final one is refusing, but they can still refuse it. They're asking them to use their professional judgment. And based off of the feedback from several of our dealers over the last 2 days, there are pharmacists, CVS being one of them, that has said, no, we're rejecting them. We are not going to accept them. They have taken that ability of using their professional judgment out. And even if it's a life-altering drug, as the feedback we're getting right now is that they're is that they are refusing them. So this is scary. Over on the right, you see that there's the pharmacy.ca.gov website. That's where you can find this memo. This is something that you will want to provide your medical customers so they can kind of read over this and understand the pharmacist's stance. I do understand that there was a memo issued by the Medical Board of California, but and it basically reiterates all of these items here. We also now have this link to this memo updated and uploaded onto our website. So if you go to Printco's website and you go under the prescription form area and you find the state of California, within there is going to be a link to this document that you can download and again pass on to your medical customers to help them understand what's impacting with the changes, as well as what their options are if they don't have serial ID forms right away. So that's really in a nutshell. A couple things I want to talk about with some questions I've already gotten in the past week, and then I'm going to open it up to everyone. Hopefully, be able to open it up to everyone to ask kind of some questions. But what was the timeline? So here's the general timeline: is that the law went into the law got signed into a law in September of 2018. We, as a printer, we received notification from the Department of Justice that a law was in place and that they would give us future guidance on what that law meant for us. They notified us not until November 30th that something was on the books. Then on December 11th is when we received instructions from the Department of Justice on what that serial ID would look like and what it needed to do as far as the kind of sequential numbering and the logic building into that. So from the 11th, we were able to decide and determine where the serial ID was going to go and whether or not we're going to be able to do that with our numbering programs that we utilize for the old format. So we didn't get approval on the new format until December 18th. At which time we went into overdrive as far as reprogramming everything to be able to accommodate the logic for the new numbering serial ID information. And we were able to kind of launch being able to do that on December 26th. At that point, we were under the expectation that the Board of Pharmacy was going to give a grace period on it. So then, of course, on December 27th, the day after we started producing the serial ID, the Board of Pharmacy came out and had issued their statement saying that all forms without it are non-compliant and that the pharmacists do have the option of rejecting it. So, and then the deadline went into place January 1st. So you can see that we've had a fun-filled holidays, including Christmas and New Year's. We all did spend Christmas and New Year's with our families, but in between then, it was pretty much everything California prescription forms. So that's a little bit of the timeline. It's been extremely fast. It's been a bad news that the lawmakers as well as the Board of Pharmacy have not provided that grandfathering break-in time for the new format. And so what we're hearing right now is a lot of doctors that are catching wind of this, they're scrambling for it. They understand that the law had no grandfathering in place. They understand that they're understanding that their forms may or may not be rejected depending upon the pharmacist. Again, the control is really with the pharmacist in this case. So if your customers have forms, well, they most likely have forms without the serial ID, they can try submitting it, and they may or may not get rejected. Right now, we're again hearing mixed things, so that's what we're hearing. We're getting questions from dealers from pushback from their customers saying, "Hey, I got this memo from the board, and I don't see you guys on the state approved printers site." And again, no distributor is going to be on that site. We as Printco, we're one of only 39 printers in the US that are approved to do that. And I think there's only one or two other trade printers that are on. So what you're needing to do is you need to let them know that you buy through an approved printer, and you always have had been buying through an approved printer. And you can, again, indicate on that form that they've always gotten from you the SP01 down in the lower left corner. And again, that's an indication that they've been having the first authorized printer of the state of California ever since you started providing them that service. So again, you give them that confidence that they're going to stay in compliance, and nothing is going to change for them. They're okay with that. So whether you hold yourself out as a distributor reseller or as a manufacturer, you're going to need to have that conversation with your customer of why you're not listed on the state of California site. We, as an approved printer, not only are we listed on the state of California, but we also have to have you listed on our website. So if your customer needs that proof, you let them know that your supplier is Printco. And they can see our name on the state of California site. And then you can also send them to our site, and within the California prescription form section, you're going to see a link for all of our approved dealers. Yes, that does mean then your competition that we also sell to, your customer will see that. But again, if some customers are kind of needing to have that assurance that they can see that they're getting it from a legitimate source. So those are our suggestions with that. Those are the tools that we have available for you on that. Also on our website, in addition to that Board of Pharmacy letter, also the image of the California form that we have up now has the serial ID on that sample. And you can do a right click to download that as an image, so that way you can kind of show your customer a PDF of generally where the standard form is going to have the serial ID go and what that will look like. The other question we get is, what if a customer just ordered their forms in December? Well, the short answer is that those forms are now non-compliant by the state. They can use them, but they may or may not be rejected by the pharmacists. So basically this law and then finally the Board of Pharmacy's decision rendered those forms obsolete. And whether or not they will honor them at the pharmacist, it's going to be hit or miss from what we're hearing on the feedback so far. But that means you have the opportunity to resell it to them. I get the question, well, are we going to provide them, replacement for free? No, we will not. This law caught everyone off guard with no time to be able to adjust, and we can't be able to dictate what that law did. So, but we can help you out by rushing orders through, making sure that we're compliant, and taking care of your needs that way. But that might be a tough conversation for some folks. But that law, most of the doctors that we're hearing, the doctors are not happy with the law. They've been understanding with the dealers, understanding that those forms became obsolete. They may want to know the time frame. That's kind of why I gave you that time frame of, we didn't know even what that serial ID was going to look like until December 11th, much less knowing how we were actually going to do it. They didn't give us direction on how to do it. They just told us what it needed to do. So from our programming standpoint and the IT side of producing these forms, we scrambled quite quickly as possible with that. So, and another question that we've gotten from other folks is returns. So what should be done with those old forms that are not compliant? Well, they should destroy them. They could keep them. They could try and, if they find a pharmacist that takes them, they can kind of keep submitting them, and that the pharmacist won't have an issue, may not have an issue with them until July 1st, when kind of the Board of Pharmacy may start putting those penalties on them for accepting them. So most likely they're going to be obsolete, and most likely they just need to destroy them. So that's where we're at with some of those questions. Definitely try and get in front of your customers if you in California, if you haven't already. I suspect because of the late notice from the medical board and the Board of Pharmacy, along with New Year's vacations, there's still probably a lot of doctors and probably even pharmacists that may not be aware of this yet. And so what we're finding out is when they're finding out, they're pretty worried about it, and you got to reassure them. So again, we've ramped up our ability to ramp up production, so that way we can keep our deadlines and production turn times, be able to accommodate any of those customers that need rushes. So we think we're ready for it, but it's going to take a lot of communication on our part. So at this point, I'm going to try to unmute everyone. Or if you'd like to send in a question via the chat box down below, we'll see if there's any questions, and if not, we'll just kind of go from there. Let me see if I can unmute folks. Well, let's see. I'm not sure if I'm having any luck on unmuting everyone and opening it up. So it looks like if you have questions now, please enter them in the chat box that should be in the bottom of the box here. And again, I appreciate your understanding with the technicalities of this. We decided about 4 hours ago that we were going to do this to help answer questions to a lot of people. Okay. Wendy, you asked, can the old secure prescriptions continue to be used for non-narcotic prescriptions? That's a new one. I don't know, but I will get back to you on that. I believe that the way that the law is written, in the definition of narcotic, I'm not certain of, but what is talked about in the law is that it applies to all Schedule 2, 3, 4, and 5 level drugs. So I don't know the difference between a narcotic, which I believe is the level 2, versus a 5. Those might not be narcotics, but they're considered a controlled substance. So if it's below a Schedule 5 drug, then yes, they should be able to use those old non-serial ID numbers, because the pharmacists are required to also report any prescriptions that they have to fill of those Schedule 2, 3, 4, and 5 drugs with the serial ID. So I hope that answers your question with that. So I believe there would be a chance if it's not a Schedule 2 through 5 drug. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV, and I'm not a pharmacist, so I don't know exactly those Schedule 5 drugs, but I do know that the Schedule 2 drugs are those narcotics, and those specifically those opioids, which is really the whole purpose of this bill. It's a part of that battle on the opioid epidemic of people getting addicted to them. So definitely the narcotic drugs are going to be a part of this. As far as the non-narcotic drugs, it's going to depend. It's going to depend if it's a Schedule 5 or greater. All right. Any other questions at this time? Not seeing any. All right. Well, that's what we got for right now. I hope that we got you some of that information that you needed. As well as, again, you can go to our website. You can find that pharmacist, that Board of Pharmacy memo. You can be able to find a sample of our standard form with the serial ID on that. You can download that to kind of send that to your customers for explanation of all that. Again, myself and Lisa and customer service team here are all available for any of those questions, as well as have those conversations with your healthcare customers, and we'll take care of them as quick as possible. And we'll really appreciate your time today. But other than that, I'll go ahead and conclude the webinar. Have a great day, guys.